I remember the exact time because I checked the microwave clock twice. 7:42 p.m. The lasagna I had reheated for one was already cooling when I sent my daughter a simple text. What time is the engagement dinner tomorrow? She replied 3 minutes later. Oh, we had it yesterday. Just close family. I read it standing at the kitchen counter, still holding the oven mitt. No apology, no explanation, just that soft, careful phrasing people use when the decision was already discussed and agreed on without you. I didn't call her. Instead, I opened the group photo she posted an hour later. 12 people around a long private room table, linen napkins, gold place cards, her future in-laws smiling. My ex-husband seated 2 chairs from her fiancé. My seat didn't exist. At 8:11 p.m., I folded the oven mitt, unplugged the microwave, and packed both into a donation box I'd been filling for weeks. A week passed without another word about the dinner. Then, last Thursday, 2:06 p.m., my phone rang while I was reviewing a bank transfer at my desk. Her voice was tight, rushed. Mom, the card got declined. Did you pay the bill? I swiveled my chair slowly, watching the printer finish, spitting out the final confirmation page. I let the silence sit long enough for her breathing to change. Then I said, calmly, didn't I tell you what would happen if you cut me out? I glanced at the paid invoice beside my hand and said nothing. She didn't answer me right away. There was a small delay on the line. Not silence exactly. I could hear fabric shifting, like she had stepped into a hallway or turned away from someone standing nearby. What do you mean? She asked finally. Her voice was lower now. Careful. I didn't repeat myself. I didn't raise my tone. I just slid the printed invoice into a manila folder and aligned its corners with the desk edge. The restaurant called me 3 weeks ago, I said, to confirm the final guest count. 12. Another pause. I could hear muffled cutlery in the background, restaurant noise. So she was already there, trying to resolve it in real time. I thought, she started, then stopped. You thought I'd pay anyway. I finished. She exhaled sharply, like I'd cornered her into saying it out loud. It's not like that, Mom. I opened my email and clicked the flagged thread labeled Harrington Private Dining, contract confirmation. The timestamp read May 3rd, 9:14 a.m. They required full payment 72 hours in advance. I said, non-refundable. I covered the deposit when you booked the room. I heard her whisper something to someone beside her. A man's voice responded, low and tense. Her fiancé. Then she came back on the line. So you didn't pay the rest? I tapped the printed receipt with my pen. I redirected the payment. I said, that landed heavier. What does that mean? I stood, walked to the office window, and watched the parking lot below. A delivery truck was backing into the loading zone, its reverse alarm beeping steadily. It means, I said, the funds were already allocated. I just finalized where they went. Her breathing changed again. Faster now. Mom, this is embarrassing. They're asking for the balance. His parents are here. I pictured the table from the photo, the gold place cards, the mother of the groom's smile. I'd studied longer than I wanted to admit. I imagine they are, I said. You could have at least told me. I turned back to the desk and opened the folder. I did tell you, I said, 2 months ago, when you said you wanted a smaller dinner and didn't need me involved. That's not the same as uninviting you. I slid out the printed text thread I'd saved. Highlighted. Dated. You said, it'll just be close family from his side and dad, since he's helping with the wedding. Her silence confirmed she remembered. I continued. You didn't correct the restaurant when they called me as the billing contact. You didn't remove my card authorization. You let the contract stand. That was just logistics. No, I said, that was authority. I let that word sit between us, because that was the part that mattered. Not the dinner, not the photo, the assumption that my role, financial and otherwise, remained active even after I'd been removed from the room. She shifted again. I heard a chair scrape. Can you just pay it now? She asked quietly. I'll transfer you later. I walked to the printer and lifted the still warm confirmation sheet. The paper smelled faintly of toner. I closed the authorization window Monday. I said, the account linked to that contract no longer exists. That's impossible. No, I replied. It's procedural. I opened the folder wider, so the documents lay flat. Inside were three things: the restaurant contract, the deposit receipt, and the fund transfer confirmation. Mom, she said, more urgently now, they're standing here waiting. I pictured her fiancé's parents watching her, calculating. Then you should speak with them. I said, this affects the wedding. Yes, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, softer. You're doing this because of the dinner? I didn't answer immediately. I picked up the contract and reread the clause highlighted in yellow. Billing party retains full financial discretion prior to final settlement. When I spoke, my voice stayed even. I'm doing this because you reassign my place without reassigning my responsibility. That's dramatic. It's documented. She didn't like that word. I could hear it in the way she inhaled. You could have just talked to me. I tried. I said, you said you were busy with planning. The delivery truck outside shut off its engine. The sudden quiet filled the office. Then she said the part she probably hadn't planned to say out loud. Dad said you'd make it about yourself. I didn't react. Not outwardly. I just placed the contract back into the folder and closed it. That explains why he was seated near the head of the table. I said. She didn't respond. I checked the time on my monitor. 2:19 p.m. They're asking me to step outside and call the bank, she said. You should. I agreed. And if they won't run it again. I slid the folder into my desk drawer and locked it. Then the billing responsibility transfers to the hosting party present at the event, I said. That means us. Yes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. This is humiliating. I sat back down and aligned the pen parallel to the keyboard. I'm sure it is, I said. She stayed quiet for several seconds. Then she asked carefully, so where did the money go? I expected that question. I prepared for it. I opened my banking app, scrolled to the completed transfer, and read the description line. I finalized the payment on the property escrow. I said. She didn't understand at first. What property? I let the answer arrive, slowly. The lake house, I said. The one you said you and Daniel wanted to use for the rehearsal weekend. Her breath caught. You said you couldn't close on it without my help. I clicked the timestamp. Funds settled. Irrevocable. So, I helped, I said, but that was supposed to be later, after the wedding. I watched my reflection faintly in the dark monitor screen. Timelines change when roles change, I said. She didn't speak again for a while. When she did, her voice was smaller. So, you paid for the house instead of the dinner? Yes. Another silence. Then, are you still coming to the wedding? I looked at the closed drawer, where the documents sat. I haven't received an invitation, I said. She didn't call again that night. At 6:18 p.m., she sent a short text. We covered it. Dad put it on his card. No punctuation. No follow-up. I read it while standing at the sink, rinsing a coffee mug that had already gone cold. The faucet hummed softly. I dried the mug, placed it upside down, and didn't respond. At 7:02 p.m., my ex-husband emailed me. Subject line. This was unnecessary. No greeting. You embarrassed our daughter in front of Daniel's family. This was petty. I opened the email headers first. Sent from his office account. Not personal. Timestamp. 6:55 p.m. During business hours. That told me he'd left the restaurant early. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to a new folder I had created 2 months earlier. Label reassignment, because that's what had been happening. Quietly, gradually. On April 12th, 3:47 p.m., my daughter had called to say she and Daniel were simplifying the wedding. On April 15th, I was removed from the vendor planning spreadsheet. On April 22nd, the florist began addressing emails to her father. No confrontation, just slow edits. I printed each change log. I dated them in pen. I stored them flat. When the restaurant called May 3rd, asking me to confirm final billing, I knew something didn't match. If I was no longer involved, Why was my card still attached? So I didn't cancel. I waited. 3 days later, May 6th at 11:13 a.m., I received the finalized event summary. 12 guests. Room minimum, $4,800. Balance due, $3,600. I paid the deposit months earlier. That part one never mentioned. Instead of authorizing the final charge, I logged into the escrow account for the lake house. That file had been pending since March. Daniel had asked for help covering the closing gap. My daughter had told me it would mean so much if you contributed, even just temporarily. I noticed she never said co-owner, just contributor. On May 9th at 9:02 a.m., I completed the transfer. Same amount as the remaining dinner balance. Coincidence was unnecessary. At 8:34 p.m., the night of the dinner, I checked social media again. More photos. Daniel's mother tagged my daughter in a caption that read, "So grateful for family who show up." I enlarged the image. My ex-husband was holding a glass of red wine, smiling. 2 weeks earlier, he told me he couldn't afford to help with the rehearsal space. Yet he paid the dinner balance within an hour of my refusal. That told me something important. Capacity wasn't the issue. Priority was. The next morning, 9:11 a.m., I called the escrow attorney. I asked a direct question. If the contributing party completes payment before title transfer, who holds decision authority on usage? He paused, papers shuffling on his end. Until deed recording, majority funding retains negotiation leverage. I wrote that down. Negotiation leverage. I didn't need ownership. I needed alignment. At 10:42 a.m., my daughter called again. This time her voice was controlled. "We need to talk about the house," she said. "Of course," I replied. Daniel was on speaker. I could hear him breathing through his nose. "You changed the payment schedule without telling us," he said. "No," I corrected. "I completed the commitment earlier than requested. That affects how we structure the move." "How?" I asked. Silence. Then Daniel said, "We assumed we'd handle closing after the wedding." I assumed I'd attend the engagement dinner. I replied. There it was. The first clear line drawn. My daughter inhaled sharply. "Mom, please don't connect those things." They were already connected. I said, "You kept one. You removed the other." Daniel spoke again. "Tighter now. We didn't remove you." I opened the saved seating chart email. "Yes," I said. "You did." My daughter whispered, "This isn't productive." "It's documented." I replied. There was no yelling, just facts. At 11:03 a.m., Daniel asked the question that mattered. "If we reimburse you for the transfer, does that settle this?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked, "Reimburse from which account?" Silence. My ex-husband had transferred $3,600 the night before. The escrow gap was larger. Daniel finally said, "We'd have to rearrange some funds." I wrote that phrase down. Rearrange. The pattern was clear now. My involvement was financial until it became visible. Then it was inconvenient. At 1:17 p.m., my ex-husband texted, "You're turning this into a transaction." I responded at 1:22 p.m. It already was. That afternoon, I received an automated notification. Title recording scheduled for June 14th, 10 a.m. I marked the date in red ink. On June 2nd, 8:05 a.m., my daughter emailed me a formal repayment proposal. Installments. 6 months. No interest. Subject line. To move forward. I read it twice. The attachment included a revised rehearsal weekend schedule. The lake house was still listed as primary venue, but now beside it, a note. Access pending financial reconciliation. They had learned the language. Leverage. At 9:30 a.m., I replied with a single line. Payment in full prior to deed recording. No emotion. No threat. Just timeline. By noon, Daniel's father emailed me directly. "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding." I forwarded his message into the reassignment folder. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a recalibration. For months, I had been removed quietly. Now, the paperwork moved quietly too. At 4:48 p.m., my daughter sent one final text that day. Dad says you're trying to prove a point. I looked at the stack of printed emails beside my keyboard. The paper edges were perfectly aligned. No, I typed back. I'm clarifying roles. June 6, 8:12 a.m. I received a forwarded email from the escrow office. Not from the attorney, from Daniel. He had CC'd my daughter, his father, and my ex-husband. Subject line: clarification on contribution status. His message read, per our understanding, the funds transferred May 9th were an early gift toward our purchase, not conditional. Please confirm this for record purposes. He had used the word gift. I stared at that sentence for exactly 20 seconds before responding. At 8:17 a.m., I replied to all. For record purposes, the May 9th transfer was categorized as escrow completion, not a gift. The documentation reflects this. No emotion, no commentary, just classification. At 8:19 a.m., Daniel replied. We were told verbally this was support for the wedding transition. I opened my drawer and removed the printed escrow summary. Line 14. Source: external settlement transfer. No reference to wedding. No reference to gift. At 8:24 a.m., I attached a scanned copy of the settlement breakdown. I highlighted the section labeled Funding Conditions, pending title finalization. I added one sentence. Please note the funding conditions. I pressed send. The next reply came from my ex-husband at 8:31 a.m. You're weaponizing paperwork. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the voicemail he had left me on April 3rd. Saved. Transcribed. He had said, just help them get through the purchase. It's not about ownership. Not about ownership. I emailed the transcript at 8:44 a.m. Subject line: April 3rd call, verbatim. No explanation attached. By 9:02 a.m., the thread had grown tense. Daniel wrote, we wouldn't have structured our financing this way if we thought this came with strings. That word, strings. At 9:06 a.m., I replied. The structure was presented to me as collaborative. The engagement dinner indicated otherwise. I did not elaborate. At 9:10 a.m., my daughter emailed separately. Subject line: please stop. She wrote, this is escalating something that doesn't need to escalate. I looked at the timestamp, 8:58 a.m. She had read every document. She knew. At 10:15 a.m., Daniel's father entered the thread again. As the hosting party for the dinner, I can confirm there was no intention to exclude anyone. I opened the restaurant contract. Billing contact, my name. Event host, Daniel's father. 2 separate fields. At 10:22 a.m., I replied. The contract shows distinct roles. They were not clarified prior to payment expectation. No accusation, just structure. At 11:03 a.m., Daniel made the first mistake. He forwarded a screenshot of a group chat. He intended to prove coordination. Instead, he exposed timing. The screenshot showed a message dated May 1st. Daniel, keep her on billing for now. We'll sort it after. I enlarged the image. Timestamp clear. 2 days before the restaurant called me. At 11:07 a.m., I saved the screenshot. At 11:12 a.m., I responded. Thank you for clarifying timeline. No reaction beyond that. Silence followed for 12 minutes. Then my daughter wrote, that wasn't meant how it sounds. At 11:26 a.m., I replied, it reads as operational. Daniel attempted correction. It was temporary. I asked one question. For how long? No response. At 12:03 p.m., my ex-husband called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. You're creating a paper trail for nothing. I saved it, transcribed it. At 1:14 p.m., I received a separate email from the escrow attorney. Given the ongoing dispute reflected in the CC thread, please clarify whether funding conditions remain unchanged. I had not involved him. Daniel had. At 1:20 p.m., I replied directly to the attorney. Conditions remain unchanged pending full repayment prior to June 14th recording. Clear. Specific. Deadline anchored. At 1:28 p.m., Daniel wrote, this is punitive. I didn't argue. At 1:35 p.m., I responded, "It is procedural." That word again. The thread slowed after that. At 3:04 p.m., my daughter called. I answered. Her voice was steady. "Daniel shouldn't have sent that screenshot." "No, I agreed. You're using it. I'm acknowledging it." She paused. "You knew we were trying to simplify things." I knew I was still financially assigned. Silence. Then she said something she hadn't said before. "Dad told us you'd overreact." I didn't correct her. I asked, "What did he say exactly?" She hesitated. Then quietly, "He said you'd make it transactional." I looked at the printed contract on my desk. It had always been transactional. They just hadn't expected documentation. At 4:22 p.m., Daniel emailed again. Subject, revised proposal. Full repayment within 10 days. Wire transfer. Confirmation required. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I opened the bank portal and verified the escrow status. Pending. Funds not yet locked beyond recall window. June 14th, still ahead. At 5:10 p.m., I replied. Wire instructions attached. Repayment must clear by June 13th for PM. No negotiation. No commentary. At 5:18 p.m., Daniel replied. Understood. That word mattered. Not apology. Not emotion. Acknowledgement. The first boundary had been crossed when they left me out of the room. The second boundary was crossed when they tried to redefine the transfer without consent. Now both were in writing. At 6:02 p.m., my daughter sent a final text. Are you trying to teach us something? I read it twice. Then I replied. No. I placed my phone face down on the desk. I'm documenting. June 10th, 9:03 a.m. The wire notification arrived. Incoming transfer pending review. Amount, full escrow completion sum. Sender, Daniel M. Carter. I didn't react immediately. Instead, I opened the transaction detail and checked the memo field. It read, repayment personal, not gift, not support, repayment. I saved the screenshot. At 9:17 a.m., Daniel emailed, wire initiated. Please confirm upon clearance. I replied at 9:22 a.m. Funds pending bank verification. Confirmation will follow upon settlement. No warmth, just status. At 11:46 a.m., my bank called to verify the incoming amount. Security questions. Standard procedure. I answered each one clearly. Mother's maiden name. Last transaction amount. Branch location. The representative said. Funds will clear within 1 business day. I wrote down the name of the representative and the time. June 11th, 8:41 a.m. Cleared. I logged into escrow immediately. Balance adjusted. My contribution line, now marked reimbursed. I downloaded the updated statement, printed it, placed it on top of the folder stack. At 9:12 a.m., I emailed the escrow attorney. Repayment confirmed. Funding conditions removed. Please proceed per original timeline. At 9:19 a.m., he responded. Understood. Title recording remains scheduled June 14th, 10 a.m. No tension, no opinion, just execution. At 10:02 a.m., Daniel emailed again. Subject line. Thank you. The body was 2 sentences. We appreciate your cooperation. Let's move forward positively. I read it once. Then I opened the earlier screenshot he had sent on June 6th. The group chat line. Keep her on billing for now. I placed both documents side by side, past and present. At 11:15 a.m., my daughter called. I answered. Her tone was controlled. Daniel said you confirmed everything. Yes. So that's it. Yes. Another pause. Are you coming to the wedding? There it was again. Same question. Different tone. I checked the calendar on my desk. Invitation still not received. I'll attend if formally invited. I said. She exhaled slowly. You know you're invited. That's not how invitations work. Silence. Then she said, Dad, already RSVP'd. I'm not Dad. I replied. At 1:04 p.m., an email arrived from a vendor address I recognized. Subject, updated contact information request. The florist. They wrote, please confirm primary billing and coordination contact moving forward. I forwarded the email to my daughter without comment. 5 minutes later, she responded, please list Daniel and me only. I watched the thread close. No hesitation. Clear designation. At 2:33 p.m., my ex-husband emailed me privately. You've made your point. This didn't need to escalate. I responded at 2:39 p.m. It didn't escalate. It reconciled. He didn't reply. June 14th, 9:52 a.m. I parked outside the county recorder's office. I wasn't required to be there, but I went anyway. The building smelled faintly of paper and floor cleaner. At 9:58 a.m., Daniel and my daughter walked in. They saw me. Daniel nodded once. No smile. My daughter approached. You didn't have to come, she said. I know, I replied. At 10:03 a.m., the clerk stamped the deed. Metal seal pressed firmly. Sound sharp. Ownership transferred. Not to me. To them. Clean. Documented. At 10:11 a.m., Daniel turned to me. We'll handle everything from here. Yes, I said. That was the point. Outside, the air was warm. My daughter stood beside me for a moment. Mom, she said quietly, this felt bigger than it needed to be. I looked at the stamped copy in her hands. It was already big. I said, it just wasn't written down yet. She didn't argue. She didn't apologize either. At 11:27 a.m., I received the wedding invitation by email. Digital. PDF attachment. No handwritten note. No mention of the dinner. Just date. Location. Dress code. I downloaded it. Saved it in the same folder. Not out of anger. Out of habit. June 20th, 4:05 p.m. The rehearsal weekend location changed. An email from Daniel. Given scheduling constraints, we'll be hosting the rehearsal at a hotel instead. No explanation. No mention of leverage. Just adjustment. I didn't respond because I wasn't involved anymore. The system had reset. Roles clarified. Billing reassigned. Authority aligned. At 6:44 p.m. that evening, my daughter texted, can we have coffee this week? Not to discuss documents. Not to renegotiate. Just coffee. I looked at the message. Set the phone down. Waited 20 minutes. Then replied. Thursday, 3 p.m. Short. Clear. No conditions. The escalation had never been loud. It had been administrative. They had tried to rewrite classification. I had responded with timestamps. They had assumed flexibility. I had relied on documentation. Now, everything was clean, balanced, and no one was confused about who held what. The printer in my office hummed once more that evening. I shut it off, closed the drawer, locked it. There was nothing left to add. Thursday, 2:54 p.m. I arrived at the cafe, 6 minutes early, ordered black coffee, no sugar. The barista called my name incorrectly. I didn't correct her. At 3:02 p.m., my daughter walked in. She wore the same blazer from the escrow office. Hair pulled back. No hug. She sat across from me. Thanks for coming, she said. I nodded once. We sat in silence for 12 seconds. I counted. I didn't realize how things were layered. She said, layered how? I asked. Financially. Structurally. I stirred my coffee once. Steam was already thinning. You removed me from planning but left me on contracts. I said, that creates overlap. She looked down. Daniel said it was temporary. He wrote that. I replied. She winced slightly. I know. At 3:11 p.m., she placed her phone face down on the table. That group chat message. He shouldn't have sent it. He did, I said. She nodded. I didn't see it like that at the time. At the time, it benefited you. She didn't argue. A server dropped a tray nearby. Porcelain clinked. Dad told us you'd take things personally, she said. I took them procedurally. I replied. Another pause. I don't want everything between us to be contracts, she said. It isn't, I said, but contracts reveal alignment. She leaned back. So where do we go from here? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked, Who's listed as primary emergency contact for the venue now? She blinked. Daniel. And billing. Daniel. Good, I said. That was the fallout. Not dramatic, not explosive, just redistribution. On Monday, June 24th, I received an automated vendor update. My access to the shared planning drive had been removed. No explanation, no message, just a notification. I archived it. June 26th, 10:16 a.m. The florist emailed a revised invoice. All charges reassigned. No CC to me. Clean. June 27th, 8:40 a.m. My ex-husband sent a short text. You made it uncomfortable. I responded at 8:44 a.m. It was already uncomfortable. No further exchange. By July 1st, the rehearsal hotel contract was finalized. I saw it through a forwarded email. Deposit paid by Daniel's father. Different billing address. No overlap. The system had adjusted. Quietly, at 4:22 p.m. on July 3rd, my daughter sent me her finalized seating chart. I scanned it. My name was there. Third table from the front. No designation. Just name. That was sufficient. On July 8th, Daniel emailed me directly. Subject, vendor clarification. He wrote, moving forward, we'll handle all financial commitments independently. I read it once, replied with one sentence. Understood. That was the professional distancing, not emotional, administrative. He stopped copying me on threads, stopped asking for input, stopped assuming access. By July 12th, the escrow folder in my drawer was closed permanently. No outstanding balance, no pending deadlines. I didn't feel victorious. I felt aligned. At 6:03 p.m. that evening, I deleted the reassignment folder, not because I forgave, because it was no longer active. Systems only matter while they're in motion. On July 20th, my daughter called again. Mom, are you bringing a guest to the wedding? No, I said. Okay. No tension, no subtext, just logistics. The institutional fallout wasn't explosive. There were no confrontations, no dramatic apologies, just clarified authority, rewritten billing fields, updated contact lists, and one less assumption. That was enough. The wedding was on August 17th. Ceremony scheduled for 4:30 p.m. I arrived at 4:12 p.m., parked in the second row of the gravel lot. The air was warm, but not humid. I walked in alone, signed the guest book at 4:21 p.m. My name fit neatly between Daniel's, aunt, and a cousin I didn't recognize. No one commented on the dinner. No one mentioned the escrow. At 4:29 p.m., I took my seat. Third table from the front. White place card. Just my name. No title. That felt accurate. The ceremony lasted 22 minutes. Simple vows. No references to financial support. No speeches about sacrifice. At 5:16 p.m., cocktail hour began. My ex-husband approached first. You look well, he said. I am, I replied. He hesitated. This could have gone differently. Yes, I said. He waited for more. There wasn't more. At 5:42 p.m., Daniel walked over, suit slightly wrinkled at the shoulder. Thank you for coming, he said. You're welcome, I replied. No tension in his voice, no edge in mine. At 6:08 p.m., dinner was served. Chicken or salmon. I chose salmon. It was overcooked. I ate half. At 6:37 p.m., the father of the bride's speech began. My ex-husband stood. He spoke about guidance, about being there when it counted. I listened, did not react. At 6:52 p.m., he finished. Polite applause. My daughter found me near the dessert table at 7:15 p.m. Are you okay? She asked. Yes. She studied my face like she was checking for something unresolved. There's nothing hanging, I said. She nodded. At 8:03 p.m., I stepped outside. The gravel shifted under my shoes. I checked my phone. No new emails. No pending notifications. Just weather updates and a calendar reminder for Monday's dentist appointment. At 8:11 p.m., I deleted the saved voicemail from April 3rd. No ceremony, Just delete. I didn't need it anymore. When I returned inside, the dance floor was crowded. Daniel's mother was laughing loudly. My daughter was smiling. No one looked at me for approval. No one looked at me for payment. At 9:02 p.m., I left quietly. No announcement. No hug line. I drove home with the radio off. Parked at 9:38 p.m. The house was quiet. I placed the wedding program on the kitchen counter. Washed my hands. Changed into pajamas. At 10:04 p.m., I turned off the lights. There was no anger. No lesson. No dramatic reconciliation. Just clarity. Roles adjusted. Authority reassigned. Life continuing. That was enough.